Draft day has finally arrived. We get the opportunity to hear where Duke basketball players will be starting their NBA careers. What a day it is.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. To Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on this Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. NBA Draft Day has arrived, and we'll be talking about it here on Locked On Blue Devils with our good pal Leif Thulin, who joins us on the program here in just a moment. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. We are your one-stop shop for everything going on inside of the life of Duke athletics. We're proudly a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A special shout out to all of our everydayers out there. Greatly appreciate your support. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, why don't you leave us a 5-star rating and written review and let us know that you're an everydayer, and I'll be sure to give you a shout out on an upcoming 5-Star Friday. Also, watch us on YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share this video with your friends. Of course, we're excited that draft day has arrived. So without further ado, we bring my friend onto the program. Here is Leif Thulin back with us once again. I hope you're doing well, my friend. I know this is kind of your bread and butter anytime the draft has arrived, man.
I'm doing well, but that intro is awesome. I mean, it's awesome, baby. He's a PvP, a diaper dandy. Yeah, I could have fired me up any better. Like, I'm ready to go now.
Let's do this thing, man. Yeah, shout out to Dickie V for tagging that Blue Devils intro. Very appreciative of that there. So as we look at this draft, a big change that we've seen from previous years. Just a quick 2 cents here to Leif. It's going to be on 2 nights. We'll see round 1 this evening, and then they've decided, you know what, 30 picks, that's enough. Let's carry it over into tomorrow. I'd rather it just all be in one day, but here we are. We'll get a little bit more time to kind of digest and take in our thoughts after the first round.
I definitely prefer the one day. I love draft day, and now it's 2. I feel like you're kind of just getting a consolation prize the next day, but I mean, I won't complain. I love the draft, so I'm excited. It's a great time, and the interesting part is I was just on Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shaden. We talked about how the NBA draft is now going back to college basketball players being prioritized. For years, it has been international players, and the Wembanyama's are great, but I don't think Zachary Reshape would have been the number 1 pick in most drafts had college basketball had the NIL in place the way that they do, and the G League Ignite not being in place the way they have been. So I think it's very good for Duke. Of course, they're going to have probably 3 top 10 picks, and they very easily could have all 5 of their starters drafted within the first 40, 45 picks. So I think that teams like Duke, teams like UConn's, and teams like that going forward are going to be very well represented, and I think it's better for the American college basketball experience.
Certainly. It's been a lot of fun to be able to see these guys play and wear that college uniform and then start their professional careers. You get in so many kind of draft and stash scenarios where you're drafting somebody, you're stashing his rights away. They never come over to play. Now we've got the chance to see these guys be a part of the NBA game at the next level. And you just said it. We're hopeful that all 5 starters from Duke's Final Four team will be drafted and hearing their name called. We'll have to wait for the second round tomorrow. But what we won't have to wait for is this first pick, where the Dallas Mavericks seemed all but guaranteed, all but assured to draft Cooper Flagg with the first pick. Let's hype them up once more, Leif, on a Cooper Flagg day. What are the thoughts running through your head?
I'm just going to regurgitate the thoughts I've said in the last couple podcasts, but here they are. 1, I absolutely despise the Mavericks getting number 1, so that's out of the board. But I think that's disgusting and not how basketball should work. However, aside from that, Cooper Flagg is fantastic. I mean, I said this when I was on your show. I filled in Cooper Flagg, I want to say, at the age of 17 versus ranked opponents. He played 4 games versus ranked opponents, averaged 25.5 and 12. Like, the dude was already the best player in college basketball, then got better after turning 18 and actually won the National Player of the Year and was sensational. He was the best player in the country in all aspects. Many people knocked his shooting to start the season, right? And they said, oh, he's not a natural scorer. Okay, 19 points isn't too shabby, but it was just athletic. There's always this moniker that kind of belittled his offensive ability. Then you get to the rebounds, the assists, the defense, and all that. But you go to look at the shooting. You could label him as one of the best shooters in the class because he shot 38.5% from three and 84 from the free throw line. That's not like a Kon Knueppel volume of shooting because Kon comes off screens and is the beneficiary of Cooper Flagg. He created most of those himself. It's alarming how much he improved. And what I love most about Cooper Flagg is Brian Scalabrine likened him to a supercomputer and how he processes and is able to add to his game at a level that good players turn to great players do in an offseason. He does it in a night. And he's able to get better every single day and improve your team with his tenacity and intangibles, not to mention a precocious skill. So I think Cooper Flagg is on a clear path to be in the same vein as Jayson Tatum. And why I like him and Jayson Tatum is their games aren't identical, but both of them can be initiators of offense, score in the mid-20s in the NBA, be a 1 through 5 switchable defender. And I think Flagg he scored more. I think Tatum was a more skillful scorer at Duke. I think Flagg was, and for the record, I had Tatum number 1 that year. So I really was appreciative of what Tatum did. I had Jayson Tatum number 1, but I think Flagg's a better player at Duke, and I think he's a better prospect than Jayson Tatum was. And Jayson Tatum has been a first-team All-NBA 3 of the last 5 seasons, maybe even 4 of the last 5 seasons. So that's the top 5 player in the NBA by all metrics right there. I think by Flagg's year 4 through 8, I think he'll be on the same trajectory right there. And I think he's a better player at the same age. And that's really hard to do because Tatum was fairly precocious. The only difference is he was on the Eastern Conference final team right away. And he's only 19 and all that. Well, Flagg's 18 and he's going to be on a good team. Kyrie being out hurts their chances of really contending. But this is a team that can contend in year 2, and Flagg can be an all-star caliber player. Then by year 4, I think he's already a max player and someone who's going to be all NBA for the next couple of years after that.
No, it's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch this guy kind of play at the next level and to think about the year that he had for Duke. Year by year, it's just been crazy that, coming into the year, I'd say, we saw so many kind of defensive highlights from him in his high school ranks out on the AAU circuit. You're curious what the offensive game would look like for Cooper Flagg. And the next thing you know, here he is taking over every game, not only on the defensive end of the floor, but able to do it offensively as well. He's set to be the number 1 pick in this draft, joining the great Duke players that have held that honor. You mentioned what will be his future teammate in the NBA, and Kyrie Irving being the top pick. And then Duke recently also had Zion Williamson, Paolo Banchero go number 1. Tatum's a top 3 pick. So here we are once again, Leif. We're talking about these Duke players setting the tone at the very, very top of the draft.
I got a question for you. Who's the best Duke player? Not Christian Laettner, best one and done Duke's ever had. How do you feel about that conversation? And then how do you feel about who's the best Duke NBA player? Because I think it's almost got this misnomer of Duke players are great in college, but they're not that great in the NBA. Who's the torchbearer for you?
We've really switched, because you're right. That was what we were talking about for the longest time, is that they're so great in college. They get to the NBA and then they kind of fall off a little bit. You look at what Grant Hill was able to do throughout his career in the NBA. That was kind of the flag bearer for so long. Someone like Bobby Hurley, who had such high expectations prior to the injury and the motorcycle accident that derailed his career. There were superstars that Duke had in the college game. And this isn't even mentioning Christian Laettner, that once they got to the NBA, things just kind of fell off. Then when you look at the one and done era coming through, we've talked about it after the season ended, but Cooper Flagg assuredly has kind of locked that up with what he was able to do at Duke in his one season, going all the way to the Final Four, winning ACC championships, winning the National Player of the Year award. And then looking at the Duke at the next level, I think people want to give Kyrie some love for what he's been able to do so consistently throughout his career and having a championship on his finger. But Tatum's making a hell of a strong case as of late, man, with what he's been able to do throughout his young career.
See, I'm a Grant Hill guy through and through.
Yeah.
Granted, when he was at his best, I wasn't born yet, but
Right.
I'm a historian of the game, and I really love Grant Hill. But I would argue Zion had the best individual college season, even though I preferred Flagg vastly in the NBA sense. I think Zion I had him lower than Anthony Davis. Obviously, he went to Kentucky. But in terms of draft prospects, I had Flagg as the best American one I've evaluated, not counting Wembanyama, obviously. And so you look at that, and I think he's got a case to be the best altogether from Duke, and that's how special of a player Cooper Flagg is. That's why I asked that question.
No doubt. I'm excited to see him start his career, and it's going to start with the Dallas Mavericks when he's drafted number 1 overall a little bit later tonight. All right, let's step aside for one quick timeout. We'll continue our conversation here when Locked On Blue Devils continues in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and actually start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I'm able to realize just how much I was spending on things like food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Go ahead and take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Monarch Money is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, here we go. We continue our conversation here with Leif Thulin from the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. He's on Locked On Jazz frequently. He's appearing on Locked On College Basketball here. He's all over the place evaluating the draft at the next level. And a lot of Duke guys hope to hear their name called. Someone who has been rising draft boards as of late that we've talked about a fair bit this entire season, Leif, is Kon Knueppel. What does his prospects look like going into tonight's draft?
Well, Kon, I think you got to be looking at Charlotte as the spot. And I know there's other teams that like him.
I'd love that.
My truthful take is that I don't see Kon actually going above Trey or Ace, because I think they're more dynamic players. And that's not a slight at Kon. I just think that they have more potential to be the number 1 on a team. Kon, it can absolutely contribute and can verify and warrant a top 5 pick. I've heard him likened to Desmond Bane, and I don't dislike that much. But I think what happens is Charlotte tries to trade down because Kon's their guy, and they try to get the most value that they can. And rather than taking him at 4, they take him at 7, perhaps. And someone that wants Ace trades up and they get multiple picks. So that's not a slight at Kon. I think there's still a very real possibility he's a top 5 pick, and that would look really good to Duke. But I think that's what I think happens. As for Kon Knueppel's stock, I'm curious to see what role he inherits. If it is Charlotte, if it is someone else, how quickly is he assuming a prominent role? Does he assume a prominent role? I personally am a believer in potential when you're drafting in the top 5. I want a franchise-altering talent. I don't think Kon is a franchise-altering talent. That said, he's as steady as they come. And the worst part is I feel like I'm labeled a Kon hater. When I was before the entire season, I said this guy's going to start shooting guard for Duke. When everyone was like, oh, it's Caleb Foster, it's this and that. And I said, this guy might be the leading scorer. Like I almost undervalued Cooper Flagg by saying that I think Kon could be the leading scorer of Duke.
And you weren't the only one. Like I thought that was a very popular, just what we were expecting.
And I feel like I started that conversation in college basketball, like Hives, because I was very, very high on his tape. And I thought, well, okay, people are saying he's really playing well in the scrimmages. And I have a source that was interacting with Duke's coaching staff, and they're like, oh yeah, Kon's playing great. Like, I don't think that you're going to see Isaiah Evans play that much. And as soon as I heard that, and that was well before it became documented, I thought, you know what, this guy could be a top 10 pick. And I felt like I was really high on him. And now I feel like I'm a Kon hater because I just don't see the same potential that some people do. Because yeah, top 5 is very real possibility that he goes there, but I have a hard time believing he is a top 5 player in a class if you're to do a redraft. And that's how I tend to draft. Yeah. So I just want to preface that if people look at my big board, I have Kon at 10, but it's less about what I think he can do immediately. It's about the long term of how much potential I believe he possesses.
I'm super excited to see him get his career started. I think he was such a fun player to root for this past season. As a Hornets fan and so many in the state of North Carolina, hopeful that they'd get the number 1 pick and be able to draft Cooper Flagg and get that Duke connection there. Maybe we'll just get it with Kon Knueppel a little bit later in the draft there. So super excited to see what he could turn into. Leif, let's talk Khaman Maluach now. What do you see when you look at him? And we're looking at possibly 3 top 10 picks for Duke. Is there a chance Maluach falls past 10? Like, what does it look like tonight as we head into the draft?
I think Maluach is taken within the top 10. I think he's got to be someone that looks for one of the top guys to fall. Like if Ace Bailey's drop is as precipitous as rumored, which I do not believe it will be, then he could be a beneficiary and perpetuate his way up to the top 6. I think it's more likely he's picked between 5 through 8. I think there are some good landing spots for him in that range. I think he is pretty much a lock to go in the top 10. I like Maluach a lot. I actually have him at 9 because I think his floor, which is often seen as low because he's new to basketball, he's lengthy, he's not strong, all these different things that people talk about that are overlooked, because I think his floor is actually pretty high. I'd argue his floor is higher than that of Derek Queen's, because Derek Queen, you know what you're getting, and he's going to be good offensively and poor defensively, but how many teams are going to give him the ball? Whereas Khaman Maluach could step in and play much like Derek Lively or Mark Williams have, and be a rim protector, a defensive presence, and then a lob threat, and he actually shoots better than both those guys.
Yeah.
So that's a good player. Does he have a ton of potential to reach the ceiling that everyone's drooling over? Absolutely. I think if you were to compare he and Queen may have a higher ceiling because he could be an all-star post presence, someone who scores the ball like Alperen Şengün-esque. Whereas I think Maluach is actually the higher floor and a safer pick than Queen, because no matter the landing spot, his role is defined. And so I'm pretty high on Khaman Maluach. I know 9 doesn't seem crazy high. It's just the way I evaluate. I tend to prioritize the upside of a player. And so my upside is seeing which guys can be number 1 options, which guys can do this, and how projectable is it. And Khaman Maluach isn't going to be that, but I think you're going to get a top 10, top 15 center in the NBA for much of his career. And I think he's more immediately ready than many believe he is.
I mean, and size is a real thing. Like that's real, how big he is and kind of the impact he can make on both ends of the floor. You mentioned kind of the shooting. We only saw it in spurts at Duke this season, but obviously when you see him work out, and like we would see in practice and in the workout footage as well, like the shot is really appealing. I know that he was only 4 of 16 on the season from 3-point range, but that's kind of the next level of his game that, yeah, I mean, you remember that he's only been playing basketball for a handful of years as well. Like this is still a new sport to him. Once he starts to play more and it's the only thing he focuses on is being a professional basketball player, I'm so intrigued by what that shot's going to look like, man.
I like Khaman Maluach. And I mean, I remember the first time I watched him closely was the Olympics. I'd seen highlights, I'd seen clips, but the Olympics, he just hit an 18-footer in Anthony Davis's face.
Right.
You're like, okay, this guy's pretty good. And then, this is going to be a crazy take, but I think you're going to appreciate it. And I think your fans will. I think Khaman Maluach's film against Alabama was as good as any prospect's film all season long, because he guarded Mark Sears on pick and rolls at the level of the screen, which is so exceedingly rare for anyone, NBA, college basketball, whatever. You don't see bigs do that, not to mention an 18-year-old who's built like he is, which is spindly, long, and seen as a ball of clay to mold, not a physically cut up product like Houston's big and, those type of guys. He's not built like JoJo Tugler. He's built very differently. And so the fact that he was able to alter every shot, whether he was beaten, he'd recover, or if he was the drop coverage, he'd recover. If he was hedging, he'd impact the ball screen so far that the pick and roll would be at half court. If he was switching, he would switch and keep him in front or alter the shot from behind. I was so impressed with that game. And I wouldn't be surprised if that game elevates his stock just by that game alone to go to top 6.
Which would be amazing if you just see him like climb the draft boards as opposed to falling down. So certainly excited to see what he'll be able to do at the next level. All right, we're due for one more break here on today's show. On the other side, a couple of more guys. We got to make out the starting 5 for Duke and what tonight could look like for them. Possibly they fall into tomorrow's second round. Our conversation continues here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by one of our new sponsors here on the Locked On Podcast Network, Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of something like Viagra. Maybe you've even tried it before. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is the next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that could take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you could stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked for you, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. It's completely online, connects you with the board-certified doctor, and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege, RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege, and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. It's a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep this train moving. I've got Leif Thulin here with me on today's show. We're talking about Duke basketball in preparation for the NBA draft. We mentioned it at the top. In normal years, you're expecting a full night of draft picks, so we could see all 60 players, hear their names called, and possibly hear a couple of Duke guys there in the second round. As we transition to Sion James and Tyrese Proctor, how do you look at these prospects, Leif, and realistically, when are they hearing their names called?
I would say the 40s. I would say late 30s, early 40s for both of them.
So into the second round.
Yeah, into the second round. Is there a world someone sees the success of Lou Dort and says, Sion James, you look like Lou Dort. You can defend. You can play multiple positions. Like maybe. I would have told you that Proctor probably would have been the one that I thought was going higher up until recently. I actually like Proctor. I liked him both of his years. I thought he was going to be fantastic after the Tennessee game in which he scored 27 as a freshman. I think that Proctor is a guy where his skill set, I would have rather taken him as a point guard than when he transitioned to a shooting guard, and he improved his shot greatly, which made him effective last season. But I do think that limits what you're getting out of him, because I think if you're getting a shooting guard, I don't think you see as much positional value. And that's why I think Sion James, as the defensive rugged force, possesses a little more value, despite Proctor being a fantastic defender. So I think they're similar veins because Proctor's a better shooter and a very good defender in his own right. But if he's playing the two guard, whereas Sion James is built like he can guard 1 through 3, and you just watch the formula be set by Oklahoma City having multiple point of attack defenders. So I'd argue, I think on my board they're like 42 and 43 respectively, somewhere around there. And I've had Proctor as high as like 33 before. I just, more and more players declared. I had to tinker with my board. I think they're going to be picked in the same range. I'm going to guess somewhere between 35 and 45.
What's great to hear is that, you look at any mock draft out there, you look at all the boards and whatnot, it feels as though they're going to be drafted, right? I always get worried about the Duke guys that you see heading towards that second round. And the next thing you know, every single pick goes by and they don't hear their name called. That's still a possibility for these guys. I just don't think it's that likely, and I'm excited to kind of see their landing spots. I know that the landing spot and team means so much to answer this question, Leif, but when you look at Proctor, when you look at Sion James, this rookie season that they'll have upcoming, is there a chance to get on the floor, or is it an opportunity more so to play in the G League and that sort of thing? What do you think?
Well, definitely depends landing spot in that one.
Yeah.
You got to know about the guard depth for that. I'd imagine both these guys, because they're veterans, have a chance to play more immediately than many of Duke's prior.
If they were younger.
Because they're younger. You look at some of these guys that came out, I would have told you, like Stewart, I thought was a silly decision to declare. Maybe he was ran out of town, but I mean, he was too physically not developed. And I don't know.
In recent years, we've heard DJ Stewart say if he could go back, he'd go back to Duke. And
that one, I remember one of my good friends, and I've referenced this to you before, is a diehard Duke fan. So we talk about this stuff all the time. That's why I'm as well versed in the Duke lore as I am, despite not being a Duke fan whatsoever. I think that was one of the more clear-cut mistakes. I didn't mind it for Trevor Keels, but I still didn't think it was the right decision.
Right.
It was ambivalence. Like, if you're ambivalent, go back to Duke is my belief. And so I think a lot of these guys that have fallen, and in that case, Keels still was picked in that same range, but he was built like a freight train. So you look at some of these guys, I think the ones that are older have a more clear-cut possibility of playing sooner. And you look at recent guards that have not attended Duke, but just have been, older guards that have been picked in that same range, they start to play. And it's like you look at Javon Carter. I mean, that's going back a little bit, or Deuce McBride from West Virginia. I don't know why I went to 2 West Virginia guys, but guys that have played more basketball and know their role because they're defensively oriented do tend to play. You look at Tyler Kolek as another example recently from Marquette. He didn't play a ton because Jalen Brunson plays so much, because Deuce McBride's there. But like his skill set was valuable enough to play some minutes. And I think that's the thing is when you're older, you have a greater appreciation for what your role is and more able to adapt to that lesser role than you played in college. And in Duke's case, these guys are playing the same role that they did because they're going to have accustomed, they're going to be accustomed to playing next to someone who's an NBA player. And in this case, they have 3 top 10 picks.
Let me give you another name that just came to mind when we're talking about DJ Stewart and Trevor Keels and guys that I've had conversations with on the show, or about NBA players that are left early and you'd love to have them come back. But Trey Duval comes to mind.
Oh, that
well,
was
from the
okay. Side note for you: one, he was vastly, vastly, vastly overrated.
We've come to find that out, unfortunately. Yeah,
I remember having this argument with my little brother. He's a highlight watcher. He's like, Duval's the best point guard in the world. And I was like, no, I like these guys more. But anyway, my point being, that was the single most idiotic decision to leave that I've ever seen. And another one is one I know actually from Utah, Frank Jackson. Frank Jackson should have stayed another year, but he knew that Trey Duval was coming in, so he left. Right. And so Duke has that. So sometimes it makes sense. But I think Frank Jackson should have stayed because at the end of the year, he was fantastic. If he got to be the point guard, that 2018 team's better than it was with Duval because he couldn't shoot. And Duval leaving early, it made 0 sense. That was one of the ones I've been like absolutely certain of. There's no way it works. And so I agree with you. I think that Duke has a unique situation where they have such a factory. People are coming in, they kick you out. That happens. But I do think if you have the opportunity to go back, especially with getting paid in the transfer portal, you got to do it. And in this case, I don't think either of these guys had to do it. I think Proctor could have returned to Duke and been great, but he had the year he had. I don't think he's going to shoot better than that, so he came out at the right time. Sion James is a freight train. Like, he's going to be good at defense at the very least. And if his shot comes around at all, he's going to be useful. So I like these two coming out. I've been very critical of Duke guards in the past that have been second-round picks, and if that have come out too early.
I'm excited to see tonight unfold, excited to see this draft unfold, and hopefully we won't be having the conversations of guys that go undrafted like we're having right now. So super excited to get plugged into this. And before you know it, Leif, we'll be moving on to this next college basketball season. We'll have a lot of Kim Boozer takes and Dame saw all the other draft prospects that Duke's likely to have going into the new season. So super excited about that. But in the meantime, how could people follow you? Where can they find your work and that sort of thing?
Yeah, my Twitter is on the screen here, but if you're listening, it's just my name, LeifThulin. The L and the T are capitalized, and so I put a lot of my draft thoughts there. A lot of it right now is catered to Jazz fans, and I also have my big board on my Twitter recently, and like I referenced, you got Flagg at 1, Maluach at 9, and Kon at 10. I want to say I had Proctor and James both around 42, 43, somewhere around there. So, but there's a lot of draft takes. If you want to listen to some recent videos where I break down some of these guys, I was on Locked On Jazz, and I've also been on Locked On College Basketball, where I talk about all of these Duke guys ad nauseum. So there's plenty of Duke content on there and just draft stuff in general.
We'll talk again soon, Leif. Thanks for being here today.
Absolutely.
All right, that's Leif Thulin joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, excited to see the draft unfold tonight. Let's see where some of these Duke guys go as we'll carry in to round 2 on Thursday as well. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.